In today's video, we will be replacing the U-joints on this 1999 two-wheel drive Toyota 4Runner, replacing both the front and rear U-joints, that is, with one of these universal spider kits. See, we've got the part number here. I'll also list it down in the description. We're gonna need a 14mm box end wrench, and then we're also gonna need a ratchet and 14mm socket and or a impact in order to get the rear shaft disconnected so we can slide the entire drive shaft out. We're also going to be leveraging a bench vise and possibly a couple other tools. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, it has been about 110,000 miles or 10 years since these U-joints have been replaced. So I think it is well overdue to get them replaced and lubed up with some new grease. I honestly don't know what the interval is for changing them, but the lifespan of the joints is going to be dependent on whether or not you have a lift, how hard you actually drive the vehicle, and if you actually grease the joints at a regular cadence. I have not, which has probably led to some of the failure and the popping noises and the clunking as they go into gear. But after this replacement, I will be a bit more aware of it and greasing them on a much more frequent basis. And now a quick look at the rear. We're going to start by taking off these 4 bolts. So we've got 1, 2, and then mirrored up top we have another 1, 2 as well. You can see that I attempted to grease this rear U-joint and I actually had some success. I heard the noise decrease and there really wasn't as loud of a clunk as the vehicle went into gear. Where I had more issue was up front here in the joint that stems out of the transmission, where I could not get grease to actually come out of these caps. And you can see some of the old grease that has been flung up right here from the last time it was done. But this is the main culprit that is not maybe operating as well as it should. Alright, so now we are going to remove our first bolt, and I've already kind of loosened it up a little bit here, but you're going to fit your 14mm on the back bolt right here, and then take your ratchet or your impact, line it up, and you'll go ahead, take that back nut off, and then pull out your bolt. If you don't want to pull them all out at first, also realize you have a lock washer on there. You can just loosen them all up and then prepare for the shaft to come down after you take all of the bolts out. Alright, now that we have 2 of the bolts out, we're going to pop it into neutral and turn the drive shaft so we can get to the other 2 bolts on the right hand side. Alright, so now you can see we've rotated the shaft around and we have 1, 2 bolts, so then the 2 up top are removed already. So we're going to pop these out and then slowly lower the shaft down. Alright, now we're on to the last bolt here, and I have a feeling that the shaft isn't actually going to drop. I think there's going to be too much friction for it to drop, but let's see. Alright, there we go. There's the nut, and lock washer, pull that out. Set that off to the side. And then bolt, yeah, so friction's kind of holding it on there. You can kind of see we're popping it a little, and it's shifting a smidgen. Oh, there it goes. Whoop! Man, just about lost my melon. Okay, so I'm currently holding the shaft with my left hand, trying to give you guys the best shot possible. So here's the front of the shaft, and then work our way down. Here's the end of the shaft. So you can see we popped it out. And I'm just gonna slowly lower it and set it. Oh, it's sliding now. Hold on just a second. Okay, so here you can see the front of the drive shaft, and there's actually the old paint mark from the last time this job was possibly done. You can see it's almost pulled all the way out. I really just have it resting before I pull it out from underneath the vehicle, but that's all it really takes is just those 4 bolts and a little bump. So here we have the shaft in all of its glory. And what I want to focus on is this front portion really quick. So here we are looking at the front, and you can see over here on this cap, there was actually some old grease that was popping out. But as we look over at this cap, or any of the other 3 caps for that matter, no grease was coming out whenever I was trying to re-grease it. And subsequently, as I try and move this around, there's a lot of friction as I try and move this upward, meaning that the joint was not going in its full range of motion, which is probably what was causing that cracking and popping noise. Now, if we flip it around to the end, you can see there's copious amounts of grease on this joint, and it actually moves through all angles and all degrees, just as it should. Now, just because that rear joint is a bit more loose, a bit more flexible than the front, does not mean that I'm not going to replace it. I'm going to replace both of them to keep the same maintenance interval as I move forward with this vehicle. Okay, so now starting with the rear, we're going to start to get these caps out, but first we have to get those little C-clips out. Here is a clean one right here. So we're going to have to pop these out. I went ahead and cleaned up as much grease as I could, but now we're going to pop those C-clips out so that we can move the joint one way and then pop the cap out and move it back the other. So we've got another one. You really just have to keep hitting on one end with a flathead and a hammer until they just slide on out. And lastly, we'll take off the last clip. There it is. And now we should be able to start removing some of these caps. Okay, after whacking away with the bench vise and spraying with WD-40, I made my way down to the floor to really give it a whack with this mini sledgehammer. And I was able to get one cap off. You can see this one right here. I should be able to just pull it, maybe. There we go. So there's one of the caps. Let's take a closer look at that. Yeah, just taking a closer look here. The cap itself seems to have a little bit of rust on it, which is probably why it was all seized up and not really wanting to come out. There's a good indication of it right there. And I would imagine that's what the other 3 look like as well, and that's why it's been so hard to get them out. And so now I just flipped the drive shaft over, and you can see I took off the little grease fitting right there, and now I'm gonna rotate the shaft back this way so I can then knock that spider gear the other way and take that other cap off. And there you can see some of that new grease that I was pumping through this rear U-joint, and that's the channel that it flows through and then into the cap, and then it oozes out again. That's supposed to lubricate and help the joint move. So I've now been able to get off both caps for that one side. I also took off the Zerk fitting right there, just so I didn't damage anything on the way out. Not that we're going to use it again, but just didn't want to cause any damage. So now here's what we have for the rear U-joint, which leaves the shaft looking like this, at least on the end. So now we're going to hammer down this end. I'm going to hold it with this hand and then use a 19mm socket and just hammer away with the mini sledge. Okay, so I've been using that 19mm socket now, and you can see I've got this one cap almost popped all the way out. Same story here. Looks like there's a tad bit of rust on that cap, which is probably what kept it from really moving as well as it should have. So now using a 9mm socket, I pop that U-joint back the other way, and you can see our final cap on the rear is ready to be pulled out. Okay, so I have now cleaned up the yoke here and we have our new spider ready to go, along with our end caps, or at least 2 of them. We're going to go ahead and put these on this way and then get our C-clips in place before we bring this back down to the rest of the drive shaft and install it for the back end. So just to get the cap seated down, I went ahead and used the vise and just kind of squeezed it all together. But after measuring up with the snap ring, it looks like I'm going to need to go a little bit further. So now I'm going to take a socket, place it on the end cap, and just kind of tap it lightly to get the clearance that we need to put that snap ring on. So now we've tapped this cap in enough to where you can see our snap ring right here is now able to fit into this groove. You can see our other groove is right over here. Not enough clearance yet on that one, so we're going to tap on this cap next. But let's go ahead and pop this snap ring in place. Now just a quick thing I want to share before we put that snap ring in is this cap right here. It's almost flush with the yoke itself. There's a tiny little lip. So that's about how far you want to put your cap in until you have the clearance to actually put your snap ring in on the inside. And then I'm just going to use this brass hammer that I have to tap it into place. Alright, so just a slight tap with the hammer and you can see that now we have our snap ring in place on this side. So now we're going to turn our attention to this other side over here where we're most likely going to have to drive that cap in just a little. You can see it's just about flush right now. So we want to move it in just a bit and then we should be good to pop in that snap ring. Then again, I just have a 19mm socket. I'm taking a sledgehammer that I have right here and giving just a little pop and then a check. Okay, and so now you can see we have our snap ring that's sitting in that groove and just eyeballing, looking really close. It looks as if we have plenty of space. The spider still moves freely, so we're going to pop down this snap ring. Alright, so now you can see I have the rest of the shaft and then the rear here, and it's time to put these caps on. Probably would have been better to put the spider in this shaft and then put the yoke on, but we're learning. So then here's a look. I've got the shaft going down to the vise, and I just squeezed those 2 caps inward. And now we're going to punch them in a little bit further with the 19mm. Okay, so here we are fixing to put the first snap ring in. You can see once again there's just a tiny lip after driving that cap in that gives us the clearance we need for this first snap ring. Okay, so we just got that one snap gear in, and now we're going to pop this cap down just a little. You can see it's pretty flush right now. So we're going to hit it just a little bit to make clearance for that snap ring. Okay, I have now squeezed the drive shaft in between my thighs here. We have our snap ring in place. I've got my brass hammer. I'm going to see if I can knock it in with one swing. It's a 2-swinger. And now that we have that popped in place, just a quick check to make sure it's fully functional in all the directions, and it looks good. So now that we have replaced everything going to the rear, it is now time to take on the front portion. So we're going to follow the same process. First we're going to start by removing the snap rings, and then we are going to drive out each one of the caps. And then just as a reminder, make sure that you're also marking the alignment of your shaft. You can see from the last time somebody did it, here's our white line that we have going across, a little bit faded. I also threw another line on this side just with some Sharpie to see, so I'm doubling up there. But we're going to go ahead and clean this up and then start taking off those snap rings. Alright, so a quick update. I've gotten 2 of the snap rings off. And I'm having a little bit of trouble because the snap ring is actually rotating on the cap as I go to hit it off with a flathead, and just the brass hammer or any hammer will do. So what I'm doing instead is using a 2 screwdriver approach. So I hold one end of the snap ring down and then hold the other one down with another, hold them both together, and then hit one of the flatheads while keeping the other end of the snap ring from rotating. And I've seen some success with that. So I'm 50% done. I'm gonna go down to the next 2. Okay, so I just got the 4 snap rings out. You can see them over there. And my goodness, I pulled this cap off and look at how rusty, look at this. That is what came out of the cap. If that is what you find, you know that your U-joints are bad. So now let's go ahead and remove the other 3 caps and get this drive shaft back in shape. So here is cap 2. I also pulled this one off by hand. And inside, similar to that first bearing, it looks as if some of the needle bearings were actually broken in half. Okay, so now that we have 2 caps out, I was able to pull the sleeve yoke out. So that's what we have on the bench now. We'll clean that up in just a minute. Then we have the rest of the shaft down here. And we're fixing to pound out these caps with a 19 mil and the mini sledgehammer. Alright, so we just got this cap out right here. So now I'm going to take a 9mm and I'm going to line that up with the spider and just give it a gentle tap. And there we go. So now we take this cap off right here. This one looks far better than that other one. And we can now take this spider out. And this is what we are left with. Alright, so now we have our yoke ready to go. We have our new spider in place. So now we're going to take our new caps and slide them on as well. So we'll start here. And then we'll drop the other one on very gently. So now we have those 2 caps pressed on, and I'm going to take one of those snap rings and line it up to see if we have enough space or if we're going to need to pop these caps in just a little bit. And you can see this is not an ISO 9001 work environment. That's some of the fuzzy friends we have here. So now once again, we have our snap ring in place right here. We're going to give it a little bump from the brass hammer. Oop. Another one here. I seem to struggle popping the snap ring in on camera, but we've got that one in. On to the next. Pop down this cap just a little. Looks like we've got enough clearance. Now we'll take our snap ring once again, slide it into place. Oh, maybe we need a bit more space. Okay, so we got the second snap ring in. You can see we still have good mobility. So we're on to the next step. Let's go ahead and connect this to the rest of the shaft. Okay, so now we have it back up onto the bench. We do have everything aligned. So there's that original white paint marker across, and then my mark is on the other side. So we're gonna put the caps on both sides. We're gonna use this vise to press it all together if needed. Then we'll use that 19 mil, tap it into place, and put those snap rings in. All right, now let's press it together. All right, now we're gonna put on our last snap ring. There it is. First try. Let's get a flat head in here just to make sure it's fully seated. Good to go. All right, so we have the rest of the shaft put together. I've checked all of the snap rings. They are fully in place, full range of motion right here. So we're ready to slide this puppy back into the 4Runner. And then real quick, I am putting in some red and tacky Lucas Oil all-purpose grease to those two Zerk fittings on the front and back. And that's just to make sure that everything is fully lubricated and ready to go when we put it back in the vehicle. So just pumping some into the front. And first we'll see the OEM grease come out. You just want to make sure it's going through all of the caps. And then we see our new grease coming out, which will be red. All right. So now we have our shaft over there. We're going to realign it on the front end here before bolting back in the rear. So this is quite the challenge underneath the vehicle, but we have the front of the shaft installed, so now it is time to put the 14mm bolts back in. So now looking at the rear, I've popped the vehicle into neutral so that we can line up the bolts and get this squared away. Alright, so now we have all 4 of our bolts put in, so 2 on this side and then 2 on the opposite side. We're going to tighten them down and drop us off of these A-frames, and we should be good to go. And one last look underneath the vehicle. All 4 bolts have been tightened down. You can see our grease is coming out back here. We're going to check the front one more time and then drop it down. And just doing a quick check up front, everything appears to be good up here as well. Now it has been about 3 weeks and I've put about 530-ish miles on my 4Runner since replacing the joints, and I can say everything is operating as it should. There are no pops, no clunks, no clanks. It is just as it was, maybe say 10 years ago, with no noise whatsoever. So I hope this video helps you guys out. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I try and answer all of them that I can. With that, I will catch you in the next one. Oh.